All right, and there we go. Welcome back, everybody, to CHAS and Friends. We're starting up here a few minutes early. I'm sure nobody minds that. And I am joined by my wonderful friend Mason from Mason in the Dark. I will have all his links below in the description if you want to check him out. Many people in the community already know Mason, and I was telling him before we went live that he's kind of an icon in the community already. So probably many of you are already familiar with him and have watched his videos. So I'm going to turn it over to Mason to tell us a little bit about himself, and then you guys know the format. We just kind of chat and have fun.
Hello, everyone. Mason here. How are you doing? I love doing that. Way
I
too
love
much, to
it
be
too.
honest. Yeah, I'm Mason in the Dark. I am a 29-year-old, completely blind author from Staffordshire, England, and I'm an author tuber and a booktuber. I write and narrate a dark fantasy audiobook series, which is a hashtag AuthorTube original. It's called The Bleeding Ground, and it's all available in a playlist right there on my channel. You can go and check it out when you want to. If a dark fantasy isn't what you fancy, I've got blindness related content. I have book reviews, I have tag videos, and there's also the wacky comedy world of TalkTube, where there's all sorts of strange oddball characters.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I highly recommend checking out Mason's channel. In fact, Mason, my first experience with you was listening to your content on assumptions about blind people and questions about what it's like to be blind.
Oh yeah,
And I love the way that you presented it in such a matter of fact way, but with a lot of humor injected into it. I found myself laughing out loud and at the same time learning so much from you uh, about what it's like to be blind. And I think I think your videos go a long way to help sighted people uh, be able to understand it a little bit better.
I love being a part of BookTube, man. Like to hear you say something like that is so amazing because that's exactly what I want. you know, you basically just told me, "Well done, Mason. You've achieved exactly what you wanted to," and that's an amazing feeling, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm so glad, and yeah, you've definitely made an impact on my knowledge and on my funny bone many times. I've the talk tube segments have been a lot of fun to listen to, and I also love how you end a lot of your videos with, you know, make a comment or subscribe, or else I'm going to do this and that to you. It's it's humorous, and humor is the way to almost anyone's heart, I think.
I think I spend about 80% of my day laughing. I'm just I'm a silly bastard, and I love it. And I'm just glad anytime someone tells me that I make them laugh. I love your channel too, by the way. You do absolutely amazing book reviews.
Oh,
It
thank you
doesn't
so much.
it doesn't matter whether I've read the book, whether I haven't, if I never would. I don't really care. I just love hearing you talk about them.
Well, cool. I appreciate that. Yeah, I have a lot of fun with it, and that's the beauty of BookTube is just being able to have fun and share interesting content and make a lot of friends along the way.
I think that I can tell you have fun with it, and I think that is one of the things that draws me to other booktubers. Like if I go on someone's video and they just seem like they're having fun, that's what draws me in.
Hmm. Yeah, same here. Yeah. And speaking of friends, Jenny Parks has joined us. She says hi.
Hello, Jenny. Nice to
Yeah,
meet you.
yeah. She's in the bonny land of Scotland.
All right, okay. She lives in the superior part of the same island.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
under no pretenses, mate. Don't worry. I know Scotland is better.
Yeah. Yeah. she's great. Yes, I just she's one of many friends that I made here on BookTube, and I think that's a really special part of it.
I
Um,
always say to newbies on the BookTube newbie tag, I'm always like, because everyone always says, "Oh, the reason I'm starting a channel is because I don't have any friends to talk to about books," and I'm like, "Welcome to the community. You're never going to be short of people to talk to about books ever again."
right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, Chadia's here. She says hi.
What was that? Sorry, Chardia.
Yeah,
Hello, Chardia. Thank you ever so much for joining us.
yeah. Yeah, I've got a great group of people that always seem to tune into these, and yeah, it's awesome.
I love live streaming environments, but I don't get to do it much because of my technological sort of setbacks. But I
Sure.
do like them. I used to do radio as a teenager.
Hmm.
um, so between university and school in the UK, we have sixth form college or just college, and you go there and do your A levels. And while I was doing that, I was helping my sixth form set up the college radio station, which
Uh-huh.
didn't last very long after I left. Not saying that that's connected, but it might have been.
Uh-huh.
But it was great because the local paper ran like an article about it, and the picture the picture they used, rather than it being of any of the presenters or anything like that, it was a picture of my guide dog with her paws up on the table wearing wearing
Oh,
headphones
oh, that's great.
in a local newspaper. I was like, this is brilliant. That's a way only I could end up in the paper, that is. With my guide
Right.
dog doing radio.
Oh,
But
that's
yeah, I
fantastic.
enjoyed that. I used to be you know what? It's absolutely gutting that I can't find the recordings of that because they'd be so embarrassing. But I love embarrassing myself, so it'd be so fun to show people.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think there would be a lot of people that would enjoy that.
Well, you've got to imagine, you've got to imagine a slightly higher pitched version of me. So it's like an 18-year-old me
Okay.
trying my best to be a radio presenter. It's welcome to me. Welcome to Mondays with Mason, bringing you out of the weekend and getting your week off to a good start.
Oh, that's great. So just a little slightly higher pitched and yeah,
A bit
that's
more
cool. Mondays with
enthusiastic.
Mason. I like that.
Yeah, I like Mondays with Mason too, to be honest. That was one of my many short-lived marketing genius ploys.
Yeah. So I'm curious, how long have you been writing?
Okay, that's a weird question to answer because the answer is on and off, but always.
Hmm.
So as a teenager, rather than writing, I was into music and I was in various bands. Nothing, nothing successful, but just your fun little teenage bands. Did a few gigs here and there, and I did a lot of writing, lyrics and poetry and stuff. But I never really, I always wanted to be an author, and I always liked the idea of it. Like, yeah, I'll be an author. I'll write a story. And the mistake that I always made was trying to tackle a novel, and it always just sort of got started, and I'd be trying to do something, and then eventually it would just sort of peter off, and I'd get writer's block, and I'd leave it, and the idea would be forgotten. And
Hmm.
then not, I'm trying to think how long it would have been. So as my sight got worse, I stopped reading as much, and I was just back then. I was way too stubborn to listen to audiobooks because it was like I had a weird attitude growing up, right? Where these days I'm quite happy to embrace my identity as a disabled person,
Hmm.
but as a teenager, I was very against that. Like I wanted to be perceived as normal, and I sort of railed against being blind in any way. And so audiobooks to me were like, no, I just want to, I want to keep reading physical books, and if I can't, then I'm just not going to. And obviously,
Right.
I know with hindsight that was like a really immature way of doing it, but it was just how it worked out. So I didn't really read for like 8 years, and when I went through the apocalypse, which is which is when I ended up going completely blind,
Mm-hmm.
I sort of like started. Oh man, it's weird because I didn't lose my eyesight quickly. It was sort of an ongoing process,
Mm-hmm.
and things were quite hard for like the last 6 months or so when I had my vision, because my eye was just sort of I'd had a cornea transplant and it ended up rejecting,
Okay.
and so my eye was just in a really bad state, and it was quite painful for a couple of months, and uh, in the end, it just ended up being that I needed to sort of have it partially removed. And at that point, I only had sight in one eye anyway. So that
Mm-hmm.
was, that was it. I was going to go completely blind. But because of those sort of 6 months and the years previously where my sight had been deteriorating, I was sort of at the point where I was ready for it. Like with how painful those 6 months were when they were like, okay, you're going to be getting it out now on Monday. It was like, oh, I can't wait. I just need it to just be done now.
Right.
And I think that helped, to be honest. I think that that slow process, as annoying as it was at the time, was sort of a way for me to sort of process it all. And because I was ready for it afterwards, I dealt with it pretty well. And I started to sort of, my brain started to rewire itself, and I sort of went into making an effort to try and like talk to other blind people and sort of trying to embrace being a blind person. And
Mm-hmm.
so eventually I think I was watching a book review for 1984, and it was a series that a friend of mine had always loved, and I'd never read 1984. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to listen to it. And I
Mm-hmm.
listened to the audiobook, and it just reawakened that love for reading. Um, sorry, just needed a
No.
drink there.
Yeah. Sure.
Um, yeah, it just sort of reawakened my passion for it, because it was listening to that review was like my entry into BookTube. So I listened to the audiobook, I started getting into BookTube, watching people doing reviews again, and then remembering, oh yeah, I love reading. Why am I not
Mm-hmm.
doing it now? And at that time I was wanting to start a channel, and it just sort of all happened really well at once, where I got back into reading. I started the channel at the same time and thought, well, if I want to start a channel, I can be a part of BookTube. And here we are, like 2 years later.
Mm-hmm.
But I have been writing now, which, God, I'm sorry, that was one question, and it's taken me so long to get to get to the point of the answer.
Hey, no
Um,
problem. That's great.
I'm a tangent person. Yeah, I've been writing now for, I think the first short story that I wrote was The View from the Fifth Floor, which is a sort of, how do I describe The View from the Fifth Floor? It's like an observational piece about an old man describing what he can see from the balcony of his flat.
Oh, wow.
And so it's sort of it. I was inspired by the fact that I live in like sort of quite a residential area, and there's a lot of blocks of flats all in the same area. So there's got to be like, over 100 of us sort of living close by. And as I do, I had one of those thoughts one day where it was like, there are so many stories going on around me right now. And I'm the main character of mine, but there's all these people around here that they're all the main characters of their own stories. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, and I think that got me talking to Lee, as I often do. And she was just listening to me, and I was talking about like, how cool is it when you meet like an old person who's just full of stories, and you can just listen to them. And I ended up deciding to just write a story about that, basically, of an old man describing the things that he can see from his balcony. and
Yeah.
it has a masonness to it that I can't really describe because it would spoil the effect of the story.
Oh, sure.
But there's an odd masonness to it, and I think I uploaded that in August of 2021.
Okay. Hmm.
And then it was just after that when Leslie from the Nerdy Narrative joked that if I tried to write horror, it would turn out as a comedy. And me being
Yeah.
a stubborn man was like, no, I will prove you wrong. And I wrote the first volume of The Bleeding Ground, which was supposed to be a standalone sort of thing with like a dramatic ending to it. And everyone was
Yeah.
like, well, what happens next? And I'm sitting there thinking, I don't know. It was just supposed to be a one-time thing. And now here we are over a year later. I'm 8 volumes deep and I am having the time of my life.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I've really enjoyed the Bleeding Ground, and whenever I see a lot of people commenting how much they love it as well. So it obviously clicked with people. Yeah.
How much have you listened to?
I've only caught the first two segments, so I have a lot to get through on it.
Yeah, you do, but the good thing is they because of the way I write them, they tend to be I treat them all as sort of contained stories anyway. So even though it is one long story, I think you can listen to them months apart and it doesn't really matter that much because I'm releasing them months apart. So it's sort of
Mhm.
designed to be like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great, and I can always fire it up, which I did with the first two. I can fire it up in my car and while I'm driving places and listen to it, and kind of like a podcast. So yeah, and now YouTube has this podcast feature. So
What's that? I haven't heard of that.
yeah, it's brand new. I don't know if it's rolled out to everyone yet, but you can create a podcast or you can convert an existing playlist into a podcast, and people who use YouTube Music can listen to it just the audio in a podcast form. So I'm thinking about doing that with Chas and Friends actually, and the Bleeding Ground would work really well for that, I think.
Yes, it would. I'm sitting here with a massive grin on my face right now, Chaz. You can't see, but I'm like, you, you mean I can put the Bleeding Ground on YouTube Music? That's
Yep. Mhm.
yes, that's wicked. That's such
Yeah,
good news.
yeah, definitely something you want to look into. They just barely released it. It's I think it's gonna I think it's going to gain you a lot of anybody who does a podcast type format. I think it will do a lot to increase their viewership. So
Oh
definitely
wow!
something to
Thank
consider.
you for informing me of that. I don't know how I haven't heard of it yet, but that is wicked news. Thank you so much for telling me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it just came out last week, I think it was, and YouTube did a video about it on their Creator Insider channel, I think it is, and so um, I'll try and send you the link to the video about it if I after the stream. So
Oh yeah, I need to get right on that.
yeah, definitely. Yes,
It's
we got
been
a
a
few. Oh,
sorry.
sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's been it's been an interesting process going through and writing the Bleeding Ground and uploading it as I'm going because
Hmm.
I'm learning on my feet, which I feel is what I've started to sort of embrace is the angle of my channel. Like I'm a newbie author. I'm learning as I'm going along. I
Hmm.
wanted to start making AutoTube content, but I'm aware that obviously as a newbie I can't give advice because I don't know what I'm doing yet. So
Right.
I figured, well, what if I just make it that I share the lessons that I'm learning as I go along, and I think I'm really starting to like that approach.
Hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really good. We've got a few comments here. J.R. Carroll's here. He says I'm having a busy day, which I am. I'm doing a Dresden stream with him after this. So that yeah, we're gonna have a lot of fun. Lady Jane Books is here. She says hello, hello.
Hello to both of you because I was letting Chance talk. I didn't say hello to what was it, Jr.
Oh yeah, mm-hmm. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
Jr. and Lady Jane, welcome in. Thank you very much for joining us. Thanks ever so much for spending time with me today, guys.
And Jenny Park says we enjoy a tangent here, and
Oh, that's good. I'm full of
we
them.
do. Yeah, we love tangents. You can go on as many tangents as you want. um, Lady Jane says, I love the idea of all of these true life stories around us all the time and exploring that. Yeah, when you mentioned that story that you started with about the older man, I was thinking that too, that it's really cool to explore that.
Yeah, the view from the fifth floor.
Hmm.
It's in my playlist that's right there on my channel, and
Hmm.
it's about 16 minutes long, so it's a nice short story.
Oh,
Um,
that's cool.
which the bleeding ground was supposed to be, and now I'm not particularly sure how many words there is, but there's 8 volumes, and they're sort of all at least half an hour a piece, except for volume 4, which I ended up needing to make quite long because the idea that I had, there was no good place to split it in the middle without cutting like the drama of what I was
Uh-huh.
doing in the chapter. So it ended up being an hour and a half long, and I was like, well, this is massive, but but I also really love that chapter. So
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll look for. I'll have to go find. I think I missed that one. I'll have to go find it and listen to it because it sounds really cool. Um, Adam, yeah, Adam from the Art of AWR says, proving people wrong is the crux of so many creative endeavors,
yes, yeah,
and it
exactly
really
that.
is. So you proved that you can do horror without making it a full on comedy.
I to be honestly,
Real
I
thing.
to be honestly, can't you tell that I'm an author? To be honest, uh, I'm really glad that she made that offhanded joke. There was no malice in it whatsoever. She was just having a friendly joke with me, and
Yeah,
and I stubbornly went, "All right, I'll prove you wrong." And now
yeah, it was a challenge,
here I am, sort of a year and a half later, and obviously now with the good news about Half Human Heroes,
right?
it's like mad that an offhanded comment has led me down this path where I'm having an amazing time. Like people, a friend got in touch with me recently that I hadn't spoken to in years, and he was like, "How are you doing, man? What's been going on with your life?" And I sort of like rattled off everything, like I've got my channel and I'm doing this and that, and when I got to the end of it, I was like, "So yeah, I'm having a really good time."
That's awesome. Yeah, Jenny jokes here. She says you should have deliberately left it as a standalone just to annoy people, just to annoy everyone.
That's a very me thing to do, to be fair.
Right? Yeah, especially when you got this great cliffhanger ending and then it never goes anywhere. You're like, oh man.
Well, that's what J.R.R. Martin's been doing, isn't it? So,
Pretty
so it
much.
works.
He just left us hanging at the end of book 5, and it's like, now wait a minute.
Now, hang
Ridiculous.
on a bloody minute. We're 5 books deep into this series, and you're going to leave me there. Get writing.
Exactly. Brilliant idea to make them both into podcasts, Lady Jane says. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking forward to exploring that feature. So
Me
I'll
too.
look forward to seeing yours explore that as well. That'll be fun.
It's so nice of you to join us, Jane. It's really nice to hear from you. If you don't know, Lady Jane is an absolutely fantastic booktuber, and
Oh yeah, she is. Hmm.
some of the best videos that I've watched on BookTube have been produced by Jane, and I honestly stand by that. And that's not just because she's my Regency era style pen pal. We write letters to one another. They're emails, but we write them as if we're like 18th century, like as if we're like
That
Regency era pen pals.
that's fantastic. I love that. Yeah, I love that. That's really awesome that you guys do that. Yeah, Lady Jane is a lot of fun, and I always have fun watching her videos, and especially the bloopers at the end. And
You
yeah,
mean like the train that always makes its way into the bloopers?
right,
I
yeah,
started leaving a train emoji in Jane's comments,
right.
and now she leaves me a dog face.
Jenny says, could have been worse. He could have ended it right before the long winter battles. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that's a good thing about growing up, and Lord of the Rings being your favorite series ever, because like everything's out there already. You just gotta have to go find it.
yeah, yep, exactly. What have you and Lee talked about transcribing your books into print as well, or are you going to leave it as an audiobook?
Well, I do write my stories down first before I adapt them. But it's a weird process, right? Because what tends
Hmm.
to happen is I write it and then I tend to go through and edit as I'm going along because the way that talkback works, it just gets harder and harder as the file gets bigger. So
Sure.
I just tend to write sections, go back through, get that perfect, move on to the next section.
Hmm.
And by the time I get to the end, I'm like, okay, I'm happy with that. But then when I come in to record, there's certain phrases that I might have used that are like, okay, that sounds good on the page, but it doesn't sound good coming out of my mouth. So things get changed and rewritten, and occasionally I think of an extra plot point and quickly draft a couple of lines that fit really well and get it in there. So
Hmm.
the version that ends up on YouTube is inevitably different than what I write. And for a while, I was trying to then write the version that I'd got up on YouTube. But what's happening is I've ended up not doing that right now because I'm getting better at writing as I'm going along, and by that I mean in terms of like the mechanical act of writing.
Hmm.
Um, because I've always been terrible with grammar, but through the process of writing stuff down and needing to Google something and just learning that way by just sort of doing it, I'm getting better at structuring my writing. So I feel like I may as well sort of wait until I get to the end of. So I'm thinking that Bleeding Ground at the minute is probably going to end up being more than one book
Okay.
because as I've gone along, there are different things that I want to do, and I think with the material that I have, I think that it's going to be more than one. I'm not putting any solid plans in place yet. It's not a trilogy or a duology, or I don't know what it will be yet, but I think it'll be end up being more than one book. So what I'm planning on doing is waiting until I've recorded all of the first one, and then I'll go through and write it and just transcribe the stuff that I got down. Um, because I think by then I will know how to structure things a bit better. And
Yeah,
after that, I will try to get it out in print. Yeah.
that's great. Good for you, man. Yeah, don't put limits on it. If it goes beyond 2 or 3 books, more power to you. I think it's amazing. And yeah, I definitely want to listen to more of it.
Well,
But
what I think is interesting about the Bleeding Ground is that what I think I'd find interesting if I was a viewer is that you guys are on the same journey as I am. You guys are like, well, what's going to happen next, Mason? And at the minute, I don't particularly know. Like, I have a vague outline of where I'm going, but in terms
mhm.
of the specific chapters, I'm sort of plotting them as I go along. So I'm sort of I'm on the same journey as you guys, where I'm finding this world as we're going along. So we're just taking this journey together.
Mhm. Yeah, that's fantastic. I love your format for doing that. I think it really works too.
Yeah, and
Lady
I'm
Pan.
learning as I'm going forward as well. I'm learning what works and what doesn't with the like audio production.
Mhm.
Like early on in the early volumes, I was utilizing music a lot more,
Mhm.
and but I was sort of doing it so that it was like there was a constant soundtrack, and now I'm learning where which bits need music, which bits need silence, which bit
Mhm.
needs a sound effect or two. Like in Metamorphosis, which is the latest volume I put out,
Mhm.
um, when there was a scene with dialogue, I just did a couple of like scene setting sound effects, like a nature noise and that sort of
Sure.
thing. And I'm getting a lot better as time goes by, so I'm quite happy with that as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Lady Jane says, I would not miss this for anything, Mason. OMG, that was so kind. Thank you. Regency Pen Pals for life.
For life. Or
Jenny
whatever
says,
the Regency term for that would be.
Exactly.
Forever and always, my
forever
dearest
and
friend.
always. Oh, yeah, I like that. That's cool. Jenny says, this is why I'm refusing to buy King Killer till all the books are out, tired of getting burned. Yeah, I can understand that. He's taken a long time with book 3, and some of us wonder if it'll ever happen. But I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm hoping he will release it.
Yeah, I do get hesitant about getting into series when they're not, when they're going to be long, but there's not much of it out, because I'm like, no, I can't wait 10 years for this story because I'm impatient.
Right. Yeah, exactly. She says you can be like Robert Jordan and don't stop till the very end. Yeah, he literally died with his riding boots on.
That's wicked.
Mm-hmm.
So I have just realized though that I've been talking about the bleeding ground and I haven't actually told people what it is. So should I do that?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so you're gonna have to bear with me if I don't get this exactly right, because I only sort of perfected it today, but I think I've come up with like a pitch or a blurb for it. Okay, so this is sort of what I've got. I don't know why I've just put so much pressure on myself to do this. It's evil incarnate is abroad in the homeland. And I've screwed up already. Oh, I hate putting myself under pressure. Evil incarnate is abroad in the homeland. The world keeps turning and seasons die, but Valdus Doyle does not. When Doyle leaves a primitive hamlet in ruins and goes in search of something new, the last thing he expects to find is a promising young apprentice with darkness in her heart. The complexities of fate are impossible to understand, but this might be the beginning of a new long game, and Valdus is more than happy to play. When a horrifying premonition urges Evander Fletcher to return home, he finds the hamlet of Huxley utterly destroyed. Supernatural forces are at play, and they point Evander towards the far-flung north, where the kingdom of Arcadia is waiting. The homeland is vast. Valdus could be anywhere, but Evander knows in his heart that one day the gods will bring them together, and he'll make Doyle pay for what he's done. Justice will be delivered. And that's what I've got.
Sounds amazing.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome. That sounds really amazing. I love that, and I think that's a really enticing summary too. So you said you just kind of recently finalized that?
Yeah, as like sort of today. What's been happening recently is I've got to the point where I just need to do a bit of world building, at least in my own head. So I've been doing quite a lot of it. And so I had the Northern Kingdom, and I didn't know particularly what to name it, but I settled on Arcadia. So that worked for me. And yeah, so today was like the first time that I was like, yeah, that's a really good description and actually really fits the tone of what I want.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. What inspired you to write fantasy in particular?
To give you a peek behind the curtain, I didn't know what this was going to be. So, because the first volume of The Bleeding Ground was only supposed to be the standalone,
Yeah.
but what we get is, to give you a brief teaser of the first volume, because it's more or less a prologue. You've got the hamlet of Huxley, and they are sort of a rustic, rural people. And in a cell is a man named Valdus Doyle, who is evil incarnate, a man, a parasite with a blackened swinging brick for a heart that holds no love for any living thing. And he is imprisoned within this cell, and the people of Huxley are going to sacrifice him in a ritual that is designed to bring peace to the restless souls of the people that Valdus has killed. And there's a ritual, and things happen, and things go very, very bad. And yeah, so that's sort of how it all got started. And because I wanted to lean into the horror with that to prove Leslie wrong, there's lots of ghosts, and there's like a sort of ghost spirit presence within that chapter. So I didn't know where I was going to go from there.
Yeah.
But I wrote after that. The first thing I wrote was Desolation, which is volume 2. And that was where I came up with the idea of Evander, because I thought, well, what if someone was out there in the wilderness when all of the stuff from volume 1 happened, and he returns home to find everything just gone and destroyed. And so Evander has a premonition while he's out in the wilds that something absolutely horrific is happening back home. And when he arrives, what he finds is it's very, very gruesome. I do have to warn people about that with trigger warnings. It's quite gruesome what Evander finds, and basically the supernatural forces are at play, and he is told to take up the blade, and he retrieves his father's sword and goes in search of the man who destroyed his home. And so after that, I've just been rolling with it, and I knew that it was probably going to classify as dark fantasy, but I didn't really know where within that it was going to fall. It's a weird one, because I've got there's quite a lot that's going on with the Bleeding Ground. It's quite hard to explain, because so we've got 4 sort of main characters at the minute, and we've got Valdus, who has sort of one section, and Evander, who has another section. And although these 2 stories intertwine, in theory, if you went through and listened to, say, volume 1 and 3, you would get Valdus's parts. But if you went and listened to 2 and 4, they are both Evander's chapters. So you can choose whose path you want to go with, really, because even though they do tie in, they do stand alone as their own stories. And the Northern Kingdom of Arcadia is basically, it's heavily inspired by Staffordshire and the surrounding Midlands during the Industrial Revolution.
Oh, wow.
So it's it's a very industrialized city. Well, the capital, Halborough, is an industrialized city, and there's the kingdom is just sort of, like I say, it's based around the Staffordshire sort of area, with canals and cobbled streets and factories and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't remember why I was on about that now, to be honest. I went off on a tangent and lost my point.
Oh, well, my original question had been kind of, what inspired you to write fantasy, and in particular. And
I think I grew up in love with Lord of the Rings. Like, I think I read The Fellowship of the Ring when I was 8 years old. So what happened was, I saw my dad reading the trilogy, and I asked him if he would buy it for me, and he said, well, this is quite challenging, so what I'll do is I'll buy you The Hobbit, and if you like The Hobbit, then I'll happily buy you the trilogy. So I read The Hobbit, loved it, obviously, and then from there the love affair with Lord of the Rings started, and I still love Lord of the Rings now, 20 years later. So there's that, and obviously as a child of like the 90s and 2000s, I was really into Harry Potter as well. So I've always had that like love for storytelling in general, and I have liked fantasy, but I have always also liked stories that are more or less based in, I mean, what am I talking about? I'm saying more or less based in reality, but I was a fan of like Alex Rider and stuff, which is,
Oh yeah.
yes, it's based in the real world, but it's not reality, is it? I love it how as a teenager, I'm like, yeah, the government might use a teenager as a spy. That makes sense, because who'd be expecting that? I tried to listen to to Stormbreaker, which is the first Alex Rider book. I tried to listen to that recently. I was like, ooh, this is rough.
Yeah. Yeah, but
I was like,
when you're younger, it's the best thing in the world, right?
the nostalgia goggles have cracked, and this world isn't quite as good as I remember it being. But
Right.
but yeah, I think one of the things that's beneficial of writing sort of fantasy that I've found out by just doing it is that I recently put up a video that talking about my challenges as a blind author, and I was talking about
Okay.
how one of the main things I struggle with is physical descriptions,
Mm-hmm.
because I've always had rubbish sight. It only ever got worse, and now I've been blind for 6 years. So the memories of actual vision are getting slowly harder to recall. And I don't mean that in a sad way. I know some people, when I say that to them, they're like, "Oh no, that's terrible." But it's just one of those where um, I can still see in my dreams, which is great. Although it does lead to lucid dreaming,
Oh, I
which is
bet.
not great. Because my dreams go wild anyway, but it ended up being like a really strong trigger afterwards, after my surgery, because it was like I couldn't see in real life, and then I was going to sleep and I could see, and it always works as a trigger. But yeah, the images of what things actually looked like are just getting a bit hazy and harder to recall.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's quite hard to craft physical descriptions, and I sort of have to rely on my experience of what I've read, right? So when I'm trying to describe a landscape, I have to sort of think about what my tone is, and then try to think of, okay, for example, with a landscape, who better to look to than someone like Tolkien? And like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, how would Tolkien describe this landscape? And I have to rely on. I think the confession that I made in that video about about this topic was that at one point Evander makes a sarcastic remark to a sparrow, and I don't actually know what a sparrow looks like. Like, I know that it's a little bird, but other than
Uh-huh.
that, I couldn't tell you like, oh yeah, they they have like this sort of shaped head, and they have this color feathers that have like these sort of tips and stuff. And like a field to me was always just a big blurry expanse of green.
Yeah.
It was never, unless there was a big patch of brightly colored flowers. Say if you were in a garden, then yeah, I could maybe see that there's the green of the grass and like the blue of the flower bed or something. But it just means that I'm limited by sort of using influences from descriptions that I've read in the past.
Sure. Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
and the benefit of writing in a world that, so the Bleeding Ground isn't set on Earth, it's an Earth-like setting.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, it's at least Arcadia is inspired by the Industrial Revolution. But other than that, it's a world that I'm sort of just coming up with. And there isn't an overt magic system. There's hints of stuff that I've got coming, but it's more to do with dreams and stuff rather than like actual. I'm trying not to spoil things either, but basically there's no overt magic system yet. There's no magic users going around and casting spells or whatever.
Okay.
And so I think the benefit is that the rules are my own. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if I was trying to use real cities or something, I would have to stick to describing their architecture. Whereas with Arcadia, because I'm just like, okay, it's a big industrial city, I sort of know what those sorts of cities are like because I live in one of them.
Right.
So I can just I know how to talk about that sort of place.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I can make it up and whatever I say goes, which is helpful.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's a huge help. Yeah, that is definitely one of the bonuses of writing fantasy. Yeah, there's not a lot of rules really.
Well, with the Bleeding Ground, it's getting a bit easier now because the world is opening up a bit more,
Mhm.
and there are hints of like the supernatural thing, creeping in. But I've had to sort of still ground it in reality for the most part. Whereas Dishonored in Death, which is the story that's going to be published in Half Human Heroes,
Okay,
uh,
yeah.
that one is that's a proper urban fantasy world that's got dwarves and elves and all the sort of everything that you'd expect, but in this sort of urban setting. And that was a lot of fun to write because that really was, this is my world and the rules are what I want. Because with the Bleeding Ground, I've tried to keep that gritty reality to it, whereas with Dishonored in Death, it was like I can go all out with this. It's actually. Do you remember how I got you to read the sample about the river and
Yeah.
the
Uh-huh.
descriptions I was doing? That's the story that ended up as Dishonored in Death.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I am really, really excited for people to read that. So, Dishonored in Death is a gritty urban fantasy. It's about a woman. It's about a dwarf lady who is she's out for revenge, and I don't really want to tell you much more than that because I think it's fun finding out as you go along. But
Yeah.
she's a badass dwarf woman with a big beard and a mace and a motorbike, and she's off to go get revenge.
That
Apparently,
sounds amazing.
I thought you might think so. There's I won't give like too many spoilers away, but there was
You
a
had
group.
me at the motorbike. That's great.
The motorbike was fantastic, mate. The part I had it so that when she got on it, the description I basically described it as if it was sort of like a horse. So she swung her leg over the over and settled into the saddle of her mighty steed. She and like
Yeah,
and she like it rose to life like a dragon awakening from its slumber, and that's
that's cool.
to go through each
Those
of
are
the
great
city in search of.
descriptions too.
Yeah, I like that sort of thing, and I got to lean into that in Dishonored in Death because it was overtly fantastical. I got to lean into that. So there's all that section that I showed to you with about the blood moon and the description of like the city and the river and stuff.
Yeah.
All of that stayed in, and so I got to really lean into like this sort of like a really dramatic narrative voice. Like it was quite. I mean, I got to lean into it with there's elements of like there's gods in that world, and I name them, and I think so the I named them. There's brothers, and one is the father of the dwarves, and one is the father of elves, and it's Aurund and Althund.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, I never thought that I'd never thought that I'd get to do that, but yeah, the Elrond and Althund, the fathers of the dwarves and elves. I was like, yes,
That's
I was
awesome.
so excited to do that sort of thing.
Hmm. That sounds very cool. I'm looking forward to reading it at some point. Yeah, definitely.
Well, it'll be in Half Human Heroes, which is available, as far as I know, on the 15th of May in audiobook, not audiobook, in ebook and print versions.
Okay. Well, that's cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
hopefully one day it could be turned into an audiobook. I know that that's probably quite a lot of work for Jeremy, so it might not be something that's possible, but I would like to, because
yeah,
especially with Dishonored in Death, because it's fairly important to me to make my stories accessible to other blind people.
I love that. That's
Like
fantastic.
I really want to have my writing be equal, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy doing the Bleeding Ground as an audio series, because everyone gets the same experience. Because I hate it, right, when I go on content made by blind people that isn't accessible for others. Like there's a gaming channel that I know of a blind guy who plays video games, which is cool, and I really love that he gets to do that. But when you go on his videos, it's just like the video capture of the game he's playing with no like voiceover. So I have no idea what's going on. Whereas I've tried my best with Mason in the Dark to create an equal experience. Like especially with recently, I adjusted my intro so that I have my intro audio described. So it's quite important to me to make my work accessible. So hopefully, one day that's a possible thing where either the Half Human Heroes gets an audiobook or at least I can, try to work with Jeremy on something.
That's really cool. I think that's amazing that you that you're so concerned about accessibility for sighted readers and stuff as well, and for non-sighted, and just people with all different reading styles and everything, and having it, and that's going to help in the long run too. With watch time and listen time, having the more people that can access it, the better. So that's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely, and that's the reason why I ended up having the black screen, because I didn't want to need to. So my partner Lee, she's like the woman behind the curtain, right? She produces all the sound, and she never asked to run a YouTube channel. She just happened to fall in love with me, and I wanted to run one, and she's gracious enough to help me with it. So one factor was that I didn't want to need Lee to worry about the visuals of a video, because it's difficult enough, and she would feel pressure to like get the shot right and stuff, and I feel like that's too much to ask. But I also, at the end of the day, the black screen is sort of like my experience of what I get when I'm listening to other booktubers. So I wanted people to have that experience, and I wanted it so that blind and sighted people, when they go on my videos, are all on equal footing.
Yeah. That's awesome. And it's really become a signature for your channel. I wouldn't change it. I think it's amazing the way it is.
To be honest, I don't think it would work any other way.
Yeah.
I have very little facial control. I'm always pulling facial expressions, and people are like, "Oh God, your face." I'm like, "What? Your face? I'm not pulling a face." Yes, you are. You know you are. You have no facial control. So I mean that wouldn't work. And with how many, so the way I record to try and cut down Lee's like editing time, I try to do quite short takes, and then she stitches them all together in UCut. So my videos, a 10-minute video is probably maybe 40 plus parts, because I'll record a couple of sentences and then stop recording at a natural point, and then I'll record another 30 40 seconds or a minute or something, and then eventually in the end they all just get scrapped together. And so I don't think that would work in a video format, because there'd be so many cuts. Whereas in the audio format, you can disguise that.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's really interesting. I didn't know that you did it that way, but that seems like it works a lot better for what you try to do. So that's great.
Oh yeah, I mean it is great, but it's also it's also time consuming, because I'm a perfectionist, and even though I'm like blah 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 blah, okay, that take was good, but it could have been better. Okay, I'll do another take.
Yeah,
and it takes me so long to do it sometimes. I mean, it's even harder with something like the Bleeding Ground, because so obviously what I have to do is write the version in my docs, and then as I'm going through, I have to memorize a couple of sentences, record them, go back into my file, get taught back to read the next few sentences, memorize that, go back and record it, because that's just the way I have to do it, because I can't memorize it all at once, so it has to be broken down into sections. So I think the last volume of the Bleeding Ground, which was Metamorphosis, I think was 39 minutes, and I'm pretty sure it was over like 100 parts.
Wow.
Just 100 individual little parts that we stitched together, and I was really, really proud of how it worked out, to be honest.
That's very impressive. Yeah, it did. I mean, I wouldn't have known that if you hadn't said that. That's really fantastic.
It does mean that sometimes I do have to adjust my like scripting as I go along, because sometimes I'll have an idea for like a gag, right? And then I'll record it and I'll think, oh, I can do a take that's better than that. And then after 5 takes, the joke isn't funny to me anymore. So even though it might have been funny if I put it in the video, to me, it's not funny anymore. So it just ends up not being in the video.
Right. That's great. Just wanted to get a few more comments here. Paramita is here and she says hello.
Hello, Paramita.
Lady Jane says this is making me want to listen to the Bleeding Ground all over again. And she loves lucid dreaming.
I love lucid dreaming when it's good, but what I find is my brain tries to reel me back in and ends up going weird, and I'm quite a scaredy cat. So as soon as a dream goes a bit weird, I'm like, I wake up and can't go back to sleep again.
Oh, I can imagine. I've had a few of those. Yeah, Jim's books reading and stuff is here. He said, "I wish I could dream lucidly."
Greetings, Jim.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's also a curse. It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, for sure. And he also likes your idea of the dwarf on the motorcycle. A badass dwarf woman with a mace, an iron horse she rides.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, I hate saying stuff like this out loud because I hate trying to. I hate end up putting like commitments on myself. But I'm fairly sure that I'll end up writing more stories in that world, because
Cool.
I've sort of stumbled upon something perfect, because I have all these ideas for stories, right? And not all of them would work as like full novels,
Right.
and not all of them would just. Yeah, basically, I have all these ideas, and the world that I've set up in Dishonored in Death would be a perfect backdrop for any weird idea that I have. Like, if I wanted to tell a superhero story, it could easily take place in that world. Or, if I wanted to do a supernatural detective or something like that, it could easily take place in that world. So I've stumbled upon like a playground that I'm really excited about, because the Bleeding Ground is like this contained thing. Whereas in the Dagrock, which is the world in which Dishonored in Death takes place, is just a perfect playground of this like urban fantasy world that I've come up with, and I think that the possibilities are endless. Which was why it was weird when I listened to Mort and I was like, Pratchett has just got so much of me in it. Like, I saw so much of myself in his writing, and I hate saying stuff like that, right? Because I try my best to be humble, and I don't want people to think that I'm getting big-headed, like, oh yes, actually, I write just like Terry Pratchett, don't you know? But there was gags that he was doing that I was like, that's exactly how I would have done that gag. And there was so many things that I was like, oh, wow. And I was talking to Jack from Spread Book Joy, which is who I buddy read more with. And we were talking on Voxer, and she was telling me like the stuff that she'd learned about Pratchett in terms of, like different things that he does or did in the writing process. And I was like, I do that too. Oh man, I do that too. And then I went and listened to like interviews with Pratchett, and I was like, this is my dude. Like, how did I not know about this guy?
Right.
He's the hero that I never knew I had.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Pratchett is really, really good. I haven't read a ton of his stuff. I read 3 Discworld books. And well, I've actually, I could, I should say I've read four, no, five actually. I read The Color of Magic way back in the day. That was the first Discworld book I've ever read, and I probably shouldn't have started with that book. And then a couple of years ago, I went back and I started with Guards.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, that tends to be what people say. Like, don't go for Color of Magic because it'll put you off. Go for something like Mort or Guards instead.
Yeah, definitely. And then I read The Hogfather, of course, and I read Men at Arms, and I read Good Omens as well, that he did with Neil Gaiman, and so I'm a huge fan of those books. So I definitely want to read more. Terry Pratchett really was an amazing guy.
I need to get round to Gaiman because I know that he's a good writer because the Doctor's Wife is my favorite. Is one of my favorite episodes of Doctor Who
Oh, I
ever.
love
Like,
that episode.
it's such a beautiful episode. It's fantastic. It's 11th Doctor at his best. The storytelling's great. The concept that
Mhm.
Gaiman came up with was fantastic. And I'm like, well, if that's what he can do, he's obviously a good writer. But I just haven't got round to reading anything by him yet. Mostly because he's one of those authors that's so prolific. He's got so much out there that I'm like, where do I even start with this guy?
Right.
You're
Yeah.
you're a big Gaiman fan, though, right? Where would
I'm
you
a
recommend
huge
starting?
Gaiman fan. Yeah, he's my favorite author. Yeah, he really is. Um, and I'm trying to remember that. Yeah, the first book I ever read of his is Neverwhere, and that's an excellent book. Neverwhere is really good. Um, and the nice thing is he narrates his audiobooks, or most
Oh,
of them.
really?
He has a few of his audiobooks that he narrated, and then they redid them as a full cast production. And of course, all the Sandman on Audible is all it's a full cast, but he kind of narrates it as well. He's kind of the overarching narrator. But yeah,
Oh, so he's another guy that I can get influence from.
oh
Fantastic,
yeah.
thanks.
And if you've heard Neil Gaiman speak, he's like listening to. I tell people he's like listening to butter melt. Uh, at least in my opinion, he's got this great voice, great reading voice, and so yeah, Neverwhere's a great place to start. Of course, Ocean at the End of the Lane is my personal favorite of his, but
That's been recommended to me quite a lot, so
mhm,
maybe that should be where I start.
yeah, and that's a short one too. That's an easy one to crank through in 2 or 3 hours if you want to. So
All right, okay then.
yeah,
You've sold me.
yeah, it
One of those things where you can just get a quick blast of this is what you get from this person. Yeah, that's good. Okay.
yeah. I haven't read any book of his that I didn't like. There's some I like more than others, though. I enjoyed American Gods, but it wasn't my favorite of his books. It's probably my least favorite of his books.
Yeah, I've heard mixed reviews on American Gods.
Yeah, but Neverwhere and Ocean are top notch, and Stardust is good as well.
I know you're a big fan of Sandman as well, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Sandman fan. That's kind of what put him on the map.
Mm.
Is Sandman? He really yeah he really does a great job. Yeah. Um, Jenny says I could listen to him narrate a shopping list, and that's absolutely right. Yeah. I, I,
It's
I've
been the
thought
weird
about
thing.
I've thought about seeing if I could get him on hand for to do my eulogy, but then he'll probably die before I do,
He's
unfortunately.
probably on Cameo.
Yeah,
Just
graveyard book
no,
and stuff
it's
like
fine.
that.
Yeah, you get him on Cameo. You get him to record your eulogy, and then you just keep it in the bank for whenever you die.
I like that. I like that. That's really good. Yeah, that's a great idea.
It's a long dead Neil Gaiman
Yeah,
narrating
right.
the eulogy for your
Oh
funeral,
man,
like
that's the best. I love it.
for funeralception,
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
deathception.
and now there's these deep fakes out there. So who knows? Somebody will probably create a deep fake of Neil Gaiman at some point.
Reading a shopping list.
Yeah. Jenny Parks likes the Graveyard Book. That's That's her favorite. And the Graveyard Book is a fantastic book as well. So
It's funny because the Americans of BookTube quite often tell me that they like my voice, but Jenny's not going to be fooled because she's she's from Scotland, so she knows that I just have a common British voice. Do you know how hard it is to record like to do audio narration when you've got like a just a normal Midlands English accent? I don't do RP or anything like that. So like when I have to say something like her heart in my
right.
just in my like dialect, if I was just saying she's got darkness in her heart, that'd be
Uh-huh.
how it would say it. Well, then when I have to do it in like saying it in Bleeding Ground, I can't just be like she had darkness in her heart. And I have to go, she had darkness in her heart. And and
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, man, that was difficult.
Oh yeah, I bet it is. But yeah, you really have to kind of force yourself to enunciate, but you do it well. I think.
I mean
Yeah,
that
but I'm sure it is a lot of work.
that's helped by the fact that at least Valdus is quite well spoken. Like
Hmm.
Valdus Doyle, when I do his narration, is quite like this. He's very thoughtful and quiet. And when I do his dialogue, this is his voice.
Uh-huh.
Hello, I'm Valdus Doyle, and I'm a very, very bad man.
That's great. I love it.
I love doing audio work, to be fair. I love one of the reasons I like doing TalkTube is that I get to do all the weird voices like Dylan Justice, celebrity private investigator.
Right.
That's one of my favorite voices to do. It's for anyone who's interested in something really stupid. I have I have the curious case of the faceless man, and it's a mockumentary that's sort of put together like one of those like Netflix murder documentary type things, and it's. It's the documentarian talking to Dylan Justice about the case of the faceless man, which is a series of robberies that's been perpetrated by a man with no face, and nobody understands it. But Dylan Justice is on the case. And there's like, there's like fake police calls and like and that sort of thing. It's really, really stupid. And then I also have the duet of of parody radio shows that I've done as
Right.
Mason Dark, the egotistically oblivious radio DJ who's absolutely terrible at giving advice.
Yeah. Those have been some of my favorites. I really enjoy those.
One of my favorite ones to do with that is I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a bit of money on this, and I went to Fiverr, and I got this woman. Oh, what's she called now? I tell you what, I can't remember off the cuff what she's called. But I will put a link, or I'll point you in her direction in the comments or something after the video.
Okay.
But yeah, I went and used her services, and I gave her the script of what I wanted for the call in, and it was it was a panicked woman who was concerned that her daughter likes biting, and
Uh-huh.
basically like the call as she's going along and saying all these things, you realize that this child is just like a psycho, and she's calling this radio show for advice. And the woman, she was so good. Brooke DeRosa is her name, but I can't remember what she's called on Fiverr. But she was absolutely brilliant as this like tired and all I had to say was it needs to be like a tired sounding panicked woman who is concerned that her child is going to eat her. And she sent me 2 takes, and one of them was just like, that's exactly what I wanted. And afterwards recording Mason Dark's response of like just some idiotic response, because Mason Dark is an absolute airhead. um, it was so much fun. I had such a blast putting them together. But to be honest, my favorite part of both of those, and it shows because I've done more of them, is the parody advertisements that I've done for various products and things. So throughout the TalkTube episodes, there are these like adverts that pop up that are just like sort of, if you're familiar with like the GTA style humor of like the satirical advertisements they have in that, it's that sort of style. Like the most recent one that I did was the Road Ripper Triple X Titan, which is the it's the manly people carrier. So it's got like body armor, missile proof windows. It looks like a people carrier, drives like a beast, and it's like this stupid adverts that are supposed to be like, remember when your wife, when she didn't let you make you drive something lame, basically. And it's like this like overly manly commercial. Like, back then, you were a maverick of the road. You didn't want a carbon footprint. You wanted an entire crater.
Right. Wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back. I think I might have missed the Ripper one. I'll have to check that out.
And then obviously there's Faux Friends, the mechanical companions that can accompany you anywhere, which my favorite line out of pretty much anything that I've done with TalkTube is Faux Friends, the mechanical companions that can accompany you anywhere you go. Run your fingers through their silky smooth hair. It feels so real because it is.
That's great. Yeah,
I have a real. If it's not obvious, I have a very stupid sense of humor. I'm a grown man child and proud of it.
that's awesome, and you should be proud of it. I love your sense of humor. It's really amazing, and I think it's made your channel really iconic. Lady Jane says here, Mason's Talk Tube is iconic, and it really is.
Yeah,
So
Lady Jane was one of the people that helped me get that off the ground. She gave birth to a character that. So this is
I
really funny,
remember
right?
that. Yes.
And what's funny is though that character is now the voice of my cat. So
Oh, that's awesome.
so I'm putting together the radio show, and I'm like, I want booktubers to get involved because it was to celebrate my first booktube birthday. And
Yeah.
naturally, I'm like, Jane, I want you to get involved because she's just bloody awesome. So she sends me this brilliant recording of a woman that wants advice on how to how to seduce a man from the local library that she's quite clearly stalking. And I just ended up having it gave birth to a man that has a voice that's like a bit like this. He has unidentified meat in his attic, and he's looking for somewhere to store it. And last year I got a cat called Tigger, and it was a spur of the moment thing where a family friend of ours lost their mother, and she couldn't take Tigger in because she had a dog, and we wanted Tiggs to go to a good home, so he came to live with us. And because I give voices to pretty much everything, Tiggs ended up like I'd be like, "Hello, Tigger, you all right?" And then I'd be like, "Hello, Mason. Yes, I'm very good, thank you. It is time to feed me, though. You have forgotten it's approximately 5 minutes past my dinner time, so feed me now."
That's great, and it adds so much flavor to your recordings when you like give a voice to everything. So yeah, that's fantastic. I love Tigger's voice.
Well, you have to like and subscribe to Mason in the Dark, or you'll get these claws.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, if you haven't already included that threat in one of your videos, you should.
It was brilliant when I did my Discworld. When I was talking about Discworld in my last monthly wrap up, it was just perfect timing that he wandered in as I'm talking about Discworld, which is stupid. So he wandered in, and it was like in the background, and it just gave me a perfect opportunity to be like, "Oh yeah, Tigger, what do you think of Discworld?" Okay, nothing. Fine, I'll move on. And
Right.
one of my favorite things to do in my episodes is have one of those moments where the music stops for a punchline. They're like, okay, and then the music kicks back in, and I love doing that sort of thing. It always makes me laugh. The proudest moment that I've had with the channel is a little while back. Finally getting to use the Metal Gear Solid spotted noise.
Oh, cool.
I love it when people do that in videos, and I'd always wanted to use it. You know, the bring sort of like sound effect that they use, and I'd always wanted to do it, and I worked it into a video recently, and I had such a sense of satisfaction.
That's awesome.
I was buzzing.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I haven't. Oh, yeah, Man, I haven't played Metal Gear in years, but I know the sound you're talking about. Lady Jane has a comment here. She loves when authors narrate their audiobooks. You really get the tone that it was created in, and that's so true. So it makes it even more special that you do the bleeding ground, because you're kind of starting at audio first, and it really gets your intention behind it.
Yeah, it's very much written in my narrative voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I can be quite verbose with my writing sometimes. I mean, one of the things I do have to do is go through and like trim out some stuff, because I will just like wax poetic. Like one of my favorite bits of writing was in that Dishonored in Death I absolutely loved the description of like the blood moon and the mountains that I think you read. Because if you read that bit, what I noticed when I got my talkback to read it was that it has this almost like poetic like rhythm to it.
Yes.
And I was like, oh, okay, I did that without meaning to, but that's a happy accident.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite lines in the Bleeding Ground was so Valdus, his narrative chapters, Evander is first person and Valdus is followed in sort of close third person. But I tend to write the narration in his chapter as being like a bit more well spoken and verbose. And I had this. He was talking about. He was thinking about what he did in the first chapter, and he was thinking about how he was creating something, and the thing he created, I think he called it was a paragon of turpitude. And I was like, yes, I love that. I worked it in, and I sat back and went, yes, thank you very much. I like that. A paragon of turpitude.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it. Jenny says, based on his sense of humor, he probably would do you. Oh, yeah, it's still Neil Gaiman she's talking about here. Based on his sense of humor, he'd probably do your eulogy.
Yeah, from what I've heard about him, yeah, the stories I've heard people tell.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
To be honest, with me just discovering that I like Pratchett, maybe the place to start with Gaiman would just be go check out Good Omens, because didn't they work on that together, Pratchett?
They did, yeah, yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so maybe that'd be a good little bridge point.
Yeah, and there's a great new audible version of Good Omens, featuring David Tennant and Michael Sheen, reprising their roles as Crowley and Aziraphale.
I bet that's fantastic, to be fair, because Tennant is incredible. If you ever want a good David Tennant thing to watch, I don't know whether you have like a VPN or anything, but if you can get access to the UK Netflix, there's a little series called Criminal UK, and
I think I saw that on BritBox, actually.
I highly recommend giving that series a watch. So what it is it's a series that it's all based in one room, right? So it's more or less, it's all the police interview room. So each episode is a different interrogation. And you see these cops, but you only ever see them in the interrogation room, the room outside it, and the corridor outside that. You pretty much, you don't get to see them at home or anything. It's all just based around giving like these interviews. And I think David Tennant is I think he's the first episode, actually. And it's fantastic. It's just a proper character piece of David Tennant on the other side of an interrogation table, being this guy that's getting questioned, and like, you know, bit by bit things are coming out, and it's fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. That sounds amazing. I will literally watch anything with David Tennant. He is one brilliant performer, and yeah, I'll have to check that out for sure. And if it's not on BritBox, I think I saw it on there, but if it's not, I'll get me a VPN and
Line
I,
of Duty as well. You need to watch Line of Duty if you're going to get into British TV. I assume with you reading Dresden, you like crime stuff.
oh yeah, I do
Yeah.
very much.
Well, Line of Duty follows AC-12, which is an anti-corruption unit,
Okay.
and so it's just this team that are like, you know, investigating corruption within the police. It's just their job to like police the police. So there's lots of stuff about corrupt cops and stuff like that, and it's really, really good. I mean, if you like police interrogations, again, that's one of those where they sit down in a room with someone and they just like read them the riot act, and like, and I almost swore there. I'm so glad I caught myself with that.
Oh, that's okay. I have no content restrictions on this channel, so you can you can curse blue fire to your heart's content if you want to. So yeah,
I don't need to have a potty mouth though, Chaz. It was a needless F bomb that I was about to drop in there, and it just didn't need to be there. But yeah, it's
sometimes
really,
those are the
really good.
funniest, though. You know.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
It's terrible when I'm talking to my mum on the phone, because Lee can never believe it, because like her relationship with her parents is like quite polite, even though that she's good friends with them. Whereas in my mum, she's like got quite a potty mouth like I have. So when we're on the phone together, it's like blah 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 blah, F this, F that, this is S.
I love it. I love it. That's great.
And Lee's like, I can't believe you talk to your mum like that. And I'm like, you should hear the things she says to me.
Right? Chatty the Mad Chatter. Oh, I love the name. That's an amazing name, Chatty the Mad Chatter. She says, "Hello, I managed to catch some of this." Um, so
Good
she's here.
evening, Chatty. Oh, if you're not familiar with Chatty the Mad Chatter, you absolutely 100% needs to be. There is nobody more whimsical and charming on BookTube than Chatty. I
Well,
mean,
very good. That
scatterbrained too, but that's she has that in common with me. I like other scatterbrained people.
well, that's
If
good.
you read
That's a good
comments back and forth,
endorsement for me to check her out for sure.
the comments that we leave each other back and forth are, we basically write novels to each other, because as I'm watching people's videos, I write down my thoughts and respond to, you know, the point that someone's just made. So as
Uh-huh.
the later in my comments is just later in your video, because I'm just commenting as I'm going along, which is why I'm sure you've noticed that I leave long comments.
I have, and I love it.
I try
Yeah.
to tone it down with some people, because I just don't have like that sort of relationship with a lot of people, and I know that sometimes I can come across right. I can come across with a bit of scrappy do energy,
Uh-huh.
and I can be like, "Hey guys, I really like you. Do you want to be my friend?" Because basically anyone that I meet is a potential friend.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, but yeah, when I know that someone doesn't mind, and I realized quite quickly that Chatty didn't mind, she gets unfiltered me some comments.
That's great. Jenny Park says, as a Northeast Scot, she gets your frustration about like having to like be clear, like with enunciating things, because she says we speak really quickly here, so that even other Scots struggle.
It's all right, Jenny. Everyone thinks I'm from Liverpool. It happens all the time. To be fair, though, with the accents around where I live, I can see why people get my accent mixed up with a Liverpool one. Mine is a bit deeper, so it doesn't tend to like slip into it as much. But if you talk to someone from Staffordshire with like a bit of a higher pitched accent, it can sound quite Scouse.
Okay. Okay, got it. Yeah, I don't know much about the different dialects in England, but yeah, it's
I wish I could do them all. I would quite happily show you, but Liverpool, I sometimes do that in videos when I want to do like some sort of character, but it's not a good voice. It's cartoony enough to work, but not good for an impression.
okay. Oh, well, I like it. It sounds cool.
And then obviously I can do Dylan Justice quite well at this point because I just tend to sit and talk to myself in this voice, to be honest. This is like when I'm doing recording, it's like, hurry up, Mason, what are you doing? That take was perfect. You should have just stuck with that.
That's
Sounds
great.
like my first boss. My first ever job was I was like just about to turn 18 and I was working for I got this job right at a little tiny call center that I'm fairly sure in hindsight was like a boiler room project. It
Oh,
was
goodness.
it was like cold calling people and trying to get them
Yeah.
to invest in timber.
Oh
it was
my.
like it was like buy these seeds that we'll plant in Costa Rica, and then you get a cut of the price of the timber when it eventually gets harvested. So I hated doing it, but I was utterly terrified of the two guys that were in charge because they were like both these like big sort of dangerous, like sort of gruff London boys. It was like working for some guy out of a Guy Ritchie movie.
Right.
It's like,
I
right, I better
can
not put
imagine that
a
would have
foot.
been horrifying.
It really was. I was like, I better not put a foot out of line with these guys because I'll get kneecapped. They stiffed me on my wages too. I went basically.
They
I went.
did? Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so I got the job mainly to save up for my 18th birthday because I went on holiday to Gran Canaria with my dad, and
Mhm.
so I was saving for that, and so I went away for a week, come back, and they'd like basically let me know that I was fired because, and I quote, and I'm not making this up. You don't have the killer shark instinct of a salesman. And when I went to check my bank to like get my wages out, they hadn't paid me, and I was like, "Well, I'm not chasing those guys up because I'm fairly sure they're crooks."
Yeah, yeah, you might get dragged into an alley by if you went after your pay.
You'll be getting introduced to a business end of an hammer. It sounds like the orc from Lord of the Rings with that one. Then
Right? Better call your proctologist.
we've had nothing but maggoty bread for 3 stinking days.
Oh, that's great.
Actually used that voice in the Bleeding Ground. Valdus runs into these bandits when he's off in the wild, and he plans to use them for his nefarious means. But the leader of these bandits sort of stands up to him, and he's sort of like trying to get them to do a job, and he offers them like money, and the guy's like, "What's to stop us from taking that money?" Without doing your dirty work for you. I was like, right, this guy just needs to be like the orc from Lord of the Rings. And the
Why does it
take that I
sound
actually
like it?
used in Bleeding Ground was so spot on to it. I was like, yes, thank you.
That's fantastic. Jonathan Rossignol is here. He says,
Hello, Jonathan.
Bad as Red 2 is here.
Hello, Buddy's Red.
It's only been within the last couple of months that I've met her and found out about her channel. She's awesome. And now I
Yeah,
know
I've
about
heard
Chad.
people mention her in tag videos quite a bit. I haven't had a chance to check you out yet, Bad, but I will. Rest
Yeah.
assured, I will at some point. You will be bombed by a Mason comment, and you'll be like, "Oh, it's that blind bastard leaving me a novel of a comment." I want to work that into common parlance. By the way, I always call myself a blind bastard, and I people don't like doing it because people think they're like being mean or something. So I briefly considered making my my tag on YouTube at the blind bastard so that everyone would have to do that.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I like that. Chatty says, I think I've seen people driving the Manly People carrier on the school run.
Well, yes, that's what it's intended for, Chatty. That you see, what happens is they tell their wives they've bought a nice, responsible people carrier, but then when they've dropped their kids off at school, they know that if they wanted to, even though they can't because they're going for a residential area, they could go from 0 to 1,000 miles an hour in 0.6 seconds.
She also made the comment about the unidentified meat in the attic.
I know that one probably disturbs Chatty, so it's just funny.
Yeah,
and it's nothing bad. It's just an unidentified pile of meat.
Jenny says, I knew cats sounded pretentious.
That's because we're superior, and anyone who says that we're not will get their eyes ripped out, okay?
They should get you to narrate an audiobook for the Aeronauts Windlass. You could narrate the parts with Raoul.
I haven't heard of that one, is it?
That's the I think I had responded to a comment of yours on it. That's the other book series by Jim Butcher with the warrior cats. I mentioned it in a video recently. Maybe it was somebody else I was talking to with it, but
yeah, you've jogged my memory now. Sorry, you will learn through the course of our friendship that I have terrible brain fog and my memory is just it's awful.
Hey, no problem, man. I have problems with brain fog too. It's all good.
I basically have no memories before like 7 years old.
Yeah.
And apparently I wasn't paying that much attention in high school either, because a lot of that's like fading now too, and it's only been like 13 years.
Jonathan wants to know if you've ever considered doing any voice acting.
Well, to be fair, I consider what I do on my channel voice acting, because I do obviously I do a lot of the audio narration, and I've got TalkTube as well. But it's something that I've considered. I have considered going on Fiverr and starting a gig on there. But the process is so intensive right now for me.
I bet
it's really turned into a full-time job, between trying to keep up with all the booktubers because I want to, and also because that's just how it works. We sort of we all help each other out, so I need to keep up with other people. And between that and recording, which I'm very limited to what I can do, right? Because I use a Blue Yeti microphone, but technology is very inaccessible to me, right? So I got a Chromebook a couple of years ago, and even though it was what people recommended to me as being the most accessible, there was such a steep learning curve that I just couldn't use it.
Oh yeah.
So at the minute, I'm stuck with a sort of a cheap phone that I'm using, and the battery is slowly getting sort of killed by the mic, which uses quite a bit of energy. So most of my videos, because of the way I record with the many different parts approach, it can take me quite a while, and my charge often runs down, and it'll take me like 2 or 3 sessions to record. So between keeping up with BookTube, recording, doing all the uploading process, and getting it out there and stuff, and then doing writing and trying to read as well, I'm spread quite thin right now, and occasionally I do end up neglecting one of the things. Often it ends up being bloody keeping up with other people. My good friend Pax Panic sent me a message not long ago, and it took me ages to get back to her, because I've been writing recently. I've been writing a comedy sci-fi that I'm pretty sure is either going to be sort of a novelette or a novella. It's called Average Steve's Big Day Off, and it's so it's narrated by a fourth wall breaking, self-aware, third person omniscient narrator called Naz. And Naz is the personification of the construct of the narrator. So it starts off with being like, reader, I have a big problem. I know I need to hook you in right away or you'll get bored. But the author I'm currently working with is coming off a moody, dark fantasy project, and it's taking their mind a while to adjust. And it's, there's all sorts of these like fourth wall breaking jokes.
Yeah.
And it's sort of what I've tried to do is take this character called Average Steve, who is sort of thoroughly, almost aggressively average, and I've tried to juxtapose his character with the sort of wacky story that I'm building and the narrator as well. I don't want to talk too much about it at the minute because it is still in development and I don't want to be like, oh, it's this, and then it ends up being something different. But I know that's the basic idea that it's going to be. I will, I'll tell you what though, Chaz, I will send you a little bit of description that I did the other day for a strange little setting that that Steve ends up visiting on his travels, because there's time travel and planet hopping, and it's just a wacky little sci-fi adventure.
Awesome.
It's Steve, his super secret time traveling best friend Nova, and Steve's dog Smasher, who is a Staffordshire Bull, and those three are on an adventure. And I came up with a good little bit of description that I was quite happy with the other day, so I might send it to you after the stream so you can see what it is.
That would be awesome. I love that. Yeah, I'd love to get a little sneak peek. That's fantastic.
Well, I thought about sending it to you the other day, to be honest, but I also I get in my own head about things, even though if I sent you a little section of writing, you'd be like, oh, that's interesting. In my head, I'm like, yeah, but what if he's busy and it opens it up and he looks and it's my writing and he thinks, what's he doing sending me that for? I've got better things to be doing.
Chatty says she thinks Tiggs is in charge of your like and subscribe script. And I think we kind of established that earlier, didn't we?
Yes, he is the one that feeds me the threats, which is why sometimes they're quite brutal and I have to try and tone them down. Like recently, I was like, Tiggs, what can I use for today's threat? And he was like, tell them they have to like and subscribe, or I'll take their eyeballs out with a hook. I'm like, no, I don't think I can do that. I think, yes, you can. You'll do as you're told. And eventually I managed to negotiate with him and not use that one, but he's told me that I will have to use a particularly brutal one soon. Otherwise, I'm going to get punished.
Right. That's cool. She says Tiggs would definitely want to kill the death of rats. Bad as Red 2 says, does Mason show his face or is it voice only on his channel? And I'm pretty sure it's just voice only, right, Mason? There's no
it's voice only. It's a black screen. With you joining us a bit later, Bad, I don't know if you were around for me saying, but I'm a completely blind author and author tuber and booktuber. So it's a black screen because I want sighted and blind people and anyone on the visual impaired spectrum to have the same experience. I guess the only people who don't have the same experience are deaf people, but that's unfortunate. I wish I could find a way around that, but maybe one day I can start using subtitles. But I feel like you probably wouldn't get as much out of just the subtitles as I feel like I try to use. My voice is my instrument, sort of thing. Like the reason that I lean into such ridiculous voices and inflections is because the listener has nothing to look at, so my voice has to be the interesting thing. So I can't just sit here and talk like this and just tell you about the book I've been reading recently. It's good, yeah. It's got good plot twists, and I like the characters. It has to be, I've got to talk to you in a way that you'll find interesting and tell you about the depth of the characters that this author has crafted.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, your voice really is what is the signature for the channel. So I that makes sense what you're saying. Yeah. Chatty says there's a buddy read of Good Omens going on in May on MJ's channel.
All right, okay, I might get involved in
Yeah,
that
so
then.
you might be
Actually,
able
that
to
sounds good.
jump in on that. Bad as Red 2 says she wears a mask, so that's her character.
Ah, nice. Masks are
Yeah.
sweet.
Yes, they are.
Although they are ineffective to me. So unfortunately, I won't get the cool effect of your mask, but I'll know that you're wearing one. So, I mean, you can try to describe it to me if you like. That'd be fun.
Right.
You know what? You know what I always amuse myself with is imagine how different you guys look to what I imagine. Like
Oh yeah.
if I ever got my sight back, it'd be so weird watching your video and seeing what you actually look like compared to my mental image of you. Which please don't ask me to describe because it's not. It's very difficult. Um, it's kind of abstract these days the way I imagine people, and my imagination has got a lot more animated, if that
Uh-huh.
makes sense. Like
Sure.
it's a lot more like cartoony and animated rather than proper visuals. But it the thing that I really liked after I went through the apocalypse was realizing that it wasn't just black. So the thing I was always scared of going blind was that it was just going to be completely black. But I have these sort of kaleidoscopic visuals that I don't have any light perception whatsoever. So what I assume it is would be like maybe the synapses still firing to like my visual cortex.
Mm-hmm.
And I get these sort of cool kaleidoscopic like electrical signal sort of patterns. Like right now, my vision is entirely so it's like a washed out bluish grey at the minute. It's not very pleasant actually. I'm waiting for it to. So what happens is a color tends to like sort of. Sometimes it's more like being inside like space, right, where it's mostly
Mm-hmm.
black, but there's like specks of color all over the place and shifting sort of patterns. But every now and again they'll get together and form like a cloud, and that cloud will sort of like bob around and expand, and then sometimes it goes full screen, like it is at the minute. But eventually it'll just sort of like shit. It's like living inside a lava lamp, which is pretty cool because I've always liked lava lamps.
Yeah. Yeah, I love lava lamps. They're awesome. Yeah. Chatty says, OMG, that sounds epic. I want that audio. I love that series. I think she's referring to Good Omens, maybe. Because we talked about the audio drama of Good Omens. So
Yeah, I'll definitely check that one out because
yeah,
I can
that
imagine
might
that
be
Tennant would be really
talking
good in
about.
that.
Um,
I'm not particularly familiar with Michael Sheen, to be honest, though.
okay, yeah, I wasn't familiar with him before I watched the Good Omens miniseries. Um, and then I've since seen him in other things, but yeah, I wasn't too familiar with him. I always get him like when I first heard Michael Sheen, I'm like, oh, is he related to like
To
Charlie
Charlie
Sheen?
Sheen.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
and
glad it's not just
completely
me.
different family apparently. So
Different family, same name.
yeah, exactly. Chatty says, "Oh, Mason, I'm blushing. Scatterbrain Club. Yes, there is a Scatterbrain Club. Believe me.
We're kindred spirits, Chatty. I love listening to your videos. Like, just you're so charming and whimsical, and then you say things like you're currently sat on the floor surrounded by books, and I'm just like, you're so awesome.
Jenny says accents seem to change every 10 miles in the UK. Do you find that to be true?
Oh yeah, yeah. You go down the road and someone's accent will be like completely different. So like in Staffordshire, you've got places like Stoke on Trent and Newcastle, and you've got like in the Midlands, uh you've got like Birmingham and Dudley and stuff. So yeah, and Manchester. So as you like move around, the accents sort of like stay the same but change slightly until you reach another area where it's like you get disbursement of areas, and then the areas in between have a mixture of those accents. So like
Hmm.
between Manchester and Stoke, people tend to have like just sort of a mixture of like Stoke and Manchester accents, and then between Manchester and Liverpool, you've got like a mixture of that. So it just sort of gradually changes, but you can definitely hear individual, like even within sort of like the Staffordshire area, as you move around in there, I can definitely hear people that have more of a common accent like mine, and then you get people that are a bit more well spoken, but still with more or less the same accent.
Yeah, got it. Chatty has the answer for your former employers. Send Dylan Justice after them and he'll get your money back.
Yeah, well, I'd have to like Mason to do that, and we have a love-hate relationship. He loves me, I hate him. It's not fair, Dylan. I asked you to be a part of this to help me out, not to give me shit.
Right?
Well, that's what you get when you invite Dylan Justice to the show.
Right, exactly. Let's see here. Chatty says Aeronauts Windless is on her list. Yeah, you should definitely check that book out, Chatty. It's an amazing book. Oh yeah, Jenny says dogs for life. Yeah, she likes dogs.
Don't get me wrong, I absolutely love dogs.
You do too.
My partner had a Staffy Bull when we first met, and that is the cutest animal I have ever experienced in my life, to be honest. And then I had a guard dog. It was a guide dog, not a guard dog. Una would have been a terrible guard dog. She was so goofy, but yeah, I had a guide dog called Una, and she was a German Shepherd, and now I have Tiggs, who's just like a massive cat. But yeah, I love both. I was always a dog person, but living with a cat has made me appreciate cats more.
Yeah, yeah. I love dogs and cats, but as far as pet ownership, I love having or a pet having a pet that owns me, I should say. I prefer cats over dogs as far as pets, but I like other people's dogs. So yeah, I had a dog growing up. I had a purebred collie dog growing up, and yeah, so I love dogs too.
Having my guide dog was a really interesting experience. I loved having Una. It was weird when I first joined BookTube, right? Because I assume you're familiar with the lads over at the Codex Cantina.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got Mason. No, sorry, you've got Una, and I think one of Una's kids is called Mason.
Okay.
Where I'm Mason and my guide dog was Una.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And it was really weird when I first started listening to the Codex Cantina and they were like saying names, and I was like, "Oh, weird, that's my name."
That's great. Chatty says I already want to read about Average Steve. Yeah, so do I, Chatty. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy Average Steve's Big Day Off. It'll finally be something that I've written that you can like, Chatty, because I know that you don't particularly like the grittiness and the goriness that might be presented with the Bleeding Ground, because that can get the Bleeding Ground is dark, to be honest. Like, I always have Lee making fun of me because I come up with these ideas for like Veldus and stuff, and she's like, "How do you come up with this stuff? You're evil. You're a psycho." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. It's just a story." And she's like, "It's coming from your brain." But yeah, it'll finally be something that you can read. Although I do stand by that I think you would enjoy The View from the Fifth Floor, because that's something that I was really proud of, actually, especially with being my like debut short story.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely be checking that one out. Chatty says she's definitely tagging you in she says definitely tagging you in videos, Mason, and going to describe a load of random stuff so you will get an amazing booktube experience, and everyone else, the eyeball users, will have a dull one.
The eyeball users, I love that. It's I'll probably use that To be fair, going forward, chatty, I like that. Yeah, I've
Yeah.
been trying to find a way to work in like hashtag sighted people problems.
Right.
like when like when people are complaining, like, oh, it's funny because people don't tend to do it. Like the people who I'm like more comfortable with, they don't tend to complain about the lighting and stuff. But so,
Yeah.
like, say if you were like, oh, my lighting's off, I'd love to be one day just be like, oh no, Chaz, your lighting's off. Hashtag sighted people problems.
Right. Exactly. And now you can change it to eyeball user problems.
Eyeball user problems. EUP. It's the oop.
Oh, that's good. I like that. Yeah. UP. Epic Tail says hi, Chasm Mason. How's it going,
Epic.
Epic?
Hello, my friend. Been a while.
Yeah, he says, what's good?
Everything.
Everything indeed. I agree.
Everything is good. My life is fantastic right now. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, he
I've
says,
settled into a really happy point with my life, to be honest, Jazz. It's funny when I talk to people because it's just there's like this sort of annoying, overwhelming positivity that floods off me these days, and it's
yeah,
very bad for my miserable bastard reputation that I've built up over the years.
yeah. Well, I'm really happy you're in such an amazing place in your life. You deserve it, man.
It's been these last few years have been a completely ironically they've been an eye-opening experience. After the apocalypse, it was not I was not sure what to do with myself at all. And I just it's been like a long process of like learning how to be who I am now.
Yeah,
But one of the things that really helped afterwards was that I realized I'm still me. Like being completely blind didn't change who I am in my head.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
because of what I said earlier about how I was like ready to have my surgery when I had it, um, that sort of helped me adjust. And it's been so. What was really cool this year, right, was so the surgery, my eye removal surgery, the actual date of the apocalypse is the 13th of February 2017, and each year I tend to think about it, right? And especially like last year, because that was 5 years. But what was amazing this year was that the announcement of Half Human Heroes happened like right around that time.
Hmm.
And it sort of the the joy of being accepted into Half Human Heroes just completely overrode my brain. And it was the first year where I didn't think about the fact that it was the anniversary at all. And that was like a big thing where I sat back and went, wow, it really I spent all those years being afraid. And it's just like, in a way, being visually impaired and going blind has been one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because going completely blind was what made my brain change and made me want to get back into reading. And that's how I found booktube, and booktube has pushed me to write. And now it's just like being accepted into Half Human Heroes and having the bleeding ground and having everyone be so supportive of my channel. When I look back at teenage Mason and 15-year-old me really thought that YouTube was cool, wanted to run a YouTube channel. I do that now. I've always wanted to be a creative person. I do that. I've always wanted to be an author, and now I am. And I'm like, 15-year-old me would be so happy and think that I was so cool right now. And that just makes me it just makes me really proud and happy, because I'm literally living the dream.
Yeah. Oh, that's so awesome to hear. And yeah, just one good thing led to another, and it's changed your life. That's amazing.
I mean, so sometimes what you don't realize is something that was your biggest fear, or something that seems initially like a curse, can open so many different doors, and it just depends on which door you walk through. And like, luckily, I don't tend I have a pretty solid mental health situation. I don't really. I went through a little period of suffering with anxiety not long after, which I think was a result of what I went through in the last few months with my eyes.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
I got over that. And since then I've been in pretty good shape when it comes to mental health.
Mhm.
So I mean that's allowed me to sort of find my own path, and luckily BookTube has been so accepting that I started uploading videos and everyone was so welcoming, and you've all been overwhelmingly supportive, and that's really helped me because it's ideally society would be fair, right? And I wouldn't be treated differently, but that's
Right.
not necessarily how it is. After my surgery, I tried to go and get a job, and I was on the I was in like the program, like the job seekers program, where they were trying to help me get a job, and I had to
Mhm.
wait 6 months to see a disability specialist, right?
Oh, wow.
And so I waited the 6 months. I get to the job center for this appointment with this guy, and I sit down, and he hands me a couple of leaflets, which is stupid because I can't read them. They weren't
Right.
braille; they were just normal leaflets. And he was like, "Well, how do you feel about moving to London and going to a special blind college?" And I was like, "Well, no, because I live here. This is my home. I live with my partner. I've lived in my house now for like 5 or 6 years. This is my home. I don't want to move to London."
Mhm.
And basically, his response was, "Well, then you better give up on trying to find a job because there'll never be a job for someone like you around here."
Wow.
And obviously, that was quite a profound moment because it made me realize, like, wow, the system isn't set up to it's not set up to help someone like me. And they don't even care enough to try. So blind and disabled people have to find their own way of doing things. And luckily for me, I have always been interested in creative arts and being a creative person. So YouTube was a natural outlet for me. But
Mhm.
if I'd have started uploading and it had just been like screaming into the void and nobody had been interested, I might not have had that passion ignited. But I uploaded my first few videos, and the first video I ever did was it was how do blind people know when to stop wiping and 9 other stupid questions. And
Yeah.
I went and found all the stupidest questions that I could find about blindness, and then just ripped into these
Yeah.
questions and gave stupid answers.
And
And
those were
people
some
sort
of
of
my favorite videos.
and people were really, really welcoming. And then I started uploading book reviews, and people were, saying hello and getting involved and recommending me to other people. And it was just like such a welcome reception, and it was such a confidence boost that now I'm in, I'm in a genuinely good place in life where I feel that I have a community around me that supports me, that has like pushed me to achieve my dreams. I have a partner who's frigging fantastic and is so willing to help me with everything from editing to doing the sound editing on the bleeding ground and stuff like that, and doing all my thumbnails and stuff. A night like tonight wouldn't be possible without Lee, because I needed Lee to get me into StreamYard because I can't do that on my own.
Sure.
So a night like this wouldn't be possible without her. And then, all the author stuff that I'm really enjoying wouldn't be possible without you guys. So it's just like this last few years has been crazy, and I'm just glad that I was lucky enough to have those doors available to me and to have walked through them and taken that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic, and and I really appreciate Lee as well for helping you get on this and be able to do this today. And yeah, she sounds like a really amazing person.
She is without a doubt my best friend. Like it's insane that there can be someone out there that you just get along with so well. Like being being friends with Lee has always just been the easiest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like, she just gets me with
Hmm.
all my quirks and my humor and puts up with my silliness, and she's equally silly, and we just have like a happy, silly little relationship, and it's just brilliant.
That's excellent.
I mean,
Yeah.
one of the things I'm happy about as well with when it comes to Mason in the Dark as a channel is that, like, you don't find much blindness related content out there. Like, you can look, but one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of blind YouTubers, the focus of the channel is how they navigate life as a blind person, and issues to do with disability awareness and stuff like that. And I really respect that. But for me, blindness has always been like a background thing, like,
Hmm.
especially now, because when I was growing up, I had some vision. It was a different story to now, where I don't really need to think about it, right? Because I've been blind for 6 years now. So
Hmm.
I've completely adapted to the way I have to do things. So some days I completely forget I'm blind, because I'm just,
Hmm.
especially when say it's just a day when I'm in my flat with Lee, I'm so familiar with the surroundings and the mental image that I have of the flat that some days I just completely forget that I haven't seen. Like, sometimes with a TV show, say Bates Motel, I sometimes struggle to remember that I never physically watched that show because I have such a strong mental image of what the show looks like, because I was always a TV fan, so I can imagine like how they would shoot it and stuff.
Oh,
And I've
that's
got
cool.
such a yeah, I was a media student in high school, so I'm one of those people that once I get behind the curtain, I can't get back out from behind it. Like, even with being an author now, I can no longer sit back and just enjoy a story anymore because I'm
Right.
like, oh yeah, that was a well crafted line. Or, oh yeah, I like how that character art worked, and it's constantly just analyzing, and I can't stop it. And it's the exact same thing that happened with me with TV and film when I was doing media studies.
Hmm.
I'm a not a half in sort of person. When I go into something, I go all in.
Yeah. Yeah, you do, and you do it well, and yeah, you've really, I feel like you've taken off with the YouTube thing, and you created a really great community, and I'm happy I could finally get you on the channel.
Me too. I've been really looking forward to this. I love listening to Chaz and Friends anyway, and I think that you have you have something that is like an underestimated skill of, like, you're actually quite a good interviewer. You know what
Well,
questions to ask, you
well,
know when
thank
to
you.
interject, you know when to add a point, or I just think you're a really good like interviewer, and you get good stuff out of people. Except for
Well,
when you get someone rambly like me who just won't shut up.
I yeah, no, I love listening to you to rambling, and yeah, we're good with tangents and stuff here, and I really appreciate that, Mason. Thanks a lot. That means a lot.
No worries, not to worry at
Yeah.
all. Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Your collection,
Uh-huh.
have you turned that into an audiobook, or has that not been possible yet?
I have not. Well, I've done some audio recording of it, and it didn't quite turn out how I wanted, but I am thinking, um, I am planning to redo it and re-record it and record the whole book, and I'm actually thinking I may end up putting that up for free on my channel, um, because I've had a lot of people request an audiobook version of it, and I've seen a lot of authors on YouTube recently put their put their books up for free. I know Daniel Green did, um, and which that was kind of totally unexpected, but and and I think that might be the way to go. Just put it up and see how it does, because um,
Well, it just gives people a good insight into what sort of what your style is like. I think
Hmm.
that's the good thing about the Bleeding Ground is that like I get to show people what I can do, and then in future, who knows what can happen. But it's a good thing to have there for people to just consume for free and be like, okay, that's what you're offering, cool. And if in future, if I ever get something published or whatever, they might be more interested to like get that because they've had that free sample.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
To be honest,
Exactly.
though, I mean, I say that, but this really isn't about like the way I see it with the Bleeding Ground is like people often ask me like, "Are you interested in getting it published?" And in my eyes, it is because it's
Hmm.
produced, it's out there, it's up on YouTube, so that's published, isn't it? And for me, this really isn't about monetary gain. I'm not doing this because I'm like, yes, I want to be a very famous, influential author. I just want to write and have people enjoy my story. So I'm quite happy to just put them up on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I mean, that's not me making a promise that I'm never going to sell a book, all right? So don't quote me on that. But
Oh, right. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, cool. Well, Chatty had a couple comments before she left. She said she had to go, but she's going to watch the bits that she missed, and she said cheers to both of us. And she
oh,
said
cheers,
that
chatty.
eyeball users is a late Christmas gift to you.
No, sorry, that it doesn't count. Once you've reached the next holiday, it
Right?
doesn't count.
Yeah.
Valentine's Day is past now, so you can't give late Christmas presents. So unless you're calling it a Valentine's Day present, it doesn't count, chatty. I mean, if you want to give me a Valentine's present, I mean, I know we're friends, so friendship, love, that's fine. You can give me a
Yeah.
Valentine's Day
It
present.
could always be an Easter present,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, yeah. You can be call it my St. Patrick's Day present.
Right.
It's May Day soon enough. We'll say it's for May Day.
Oh, okay. There you go. That works. Well,
Seriously though, for
we're
anyone who hasn't checked out Chatty the Mad Chatter, you really, really should. She's a big fan of Robin Hobb, and
oh, nice.
she reads a lot of like whimsical middle grade, and she has a very wide reading, and purposely so because she tries her best to. You'll get a lot of like stats videos on Chatty's channel because she
Yeah.
does, she does all the reading stats of this is the sort of authors that I'm reading, and these are the sections of the world that I'm reading from. And she really makes an effort to not do what I do and stick in my comfort zone and read crime.
Right. Well,
But yeah, she's really good.
I'll definitely be checking out her channel after this is done for sure.
Actually, while we're plugging people, Chris Reviews is also fantastic. If
Oh,
anyone
yes, she
hasn't checked,
is.
if anyone hasn't checked out her channel, they really need to. You get ferrets, you get face masks and unboxings, and there's just all sorts of goodness. 1 minute reviews. The
Hmm.
Stephen King fans will absolutely love Chris's channel because she does a lot of Stephen King reviews, and also someone that I really, really want other people to check out is Katerina the Bookworm.
Oh, okay.
Katerina Katerina is fantastic. She's a horror lover,
Okay.
and she reads a lot of manga and stuff like that. But she reads horror and manga, and she does like sort of monthly wrap ups and reviews. And she also was a part of the Terror in the Trench anthology. She had a short story. So the Terror in the Trench was all it was deep sea horror,
Okay.
and Katarina had a story in that collection, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's called The Last Dive. If
Oh,
you
that's
want to
cool.
check it out, she has a reading of that story on her chapter. But she has been one of my most vocal supporters, and she loves The Bleeding Ground. And actually, she's one of the people that I write that series for because it's always so amazing to hear her feedback. And I just I wish more people knew about her.
Cool. I'll definitely Katerina the Bookworm, you said.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Very cool. Well, we've had a lot of great people on the chat today. Epic Tales is really good, and of course, Bad is Rad too, and Lady Jane Books, J.R. Carroll. So many good ones. Jonathan Rosenthal really uh, promotes like authors and booktubers and stuff, so he's a good one as well. So yeah,
It's
lots of
such a
fun.
varied community, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, we've
it
got a lot of
it's it's amazing with booktube because it's such a saturated market, but it's also full of like so many individual sort of people. And for me, like booktube has always been about the people. I don't really care about what people are reviewing as long as I find them interesting.
yeah,
And I just think it's amazing how many different sort of people you get on booktube. I think it's great that we come from all different walks of life, and yet we're united by a love of reading.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, it's an amazing way to connect with people.
Even for someone like me who can only read audiobooks, which I know some people don't count.
Well, that it's an interesting because a lot of people, a lot of eyeball users don't, uh, they don't count audiobooks as reading, but I don't like that because and that's their opinion. They're entitled to it. But I mean, what do people do who aren't able to see? I mean,
Exactly.
that's the only way they can read. And so, um, yeah, and I love that you have access to that. And it's really only been within the last decade or so that we've had this kind of access to audiobooks, and I'm really happy it's there.
Yeah, it's why I sort of I have like mixed feelings about the whole Brandon Sanderson thing because I understand all the issues that he's bringing up, but at the same
Hmm.
time, I'm so grateful for something like Audible because
Yeah.
without Audible, I wouldn't have easy access to, all these books that I listen to. And it's not just about the easy access either. Something that people don't know is that so on apps and websites, if the developer doesn't label a specific button on a site, a screen reader just reads it as an unlabeled button,
Hmm.
and so you don't necessarily know what they're doing. So I've been on apps before where, say, the play, fast forward, skip, that's all them sort of the control buttons, they're unlabeled, so you don't know which one's play, which one's fast forward and stuff. Whereas in
Hmm.
Audible is really easy, it's really accessible, and
That's
I never struggle with it. So despite its flaws, I'm eternally grateful that it exists.
hmm Oh yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if other how other apps are. I know he's made his most recent audiobook available on Spotify, and I don't know what their audiobook service is like, but I have a feeling it's probably not necessarily the same as Audible.
From what I can see, it seems that they seem fairly easy to find, and it's all sort of there in a playlist, and each chapter seems to be a different like track.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems to work. To be honest, though, well, while we're on about the subject of audiobooks,
Hmm.
I do want to make a point about the audiobook thing, is that I find I get quite worked up about the whole people not counting audiobooks as reading, right? Because I've got into arguments with people about it before on platforms like Twitter,
Hmm.
um, with me saying that I've read something and someone is like, no, you didn't. You listen to an audio, but you can't read. And I have this issue with needing to change my vocabulary for sighted people. Like,
Hmm.
I hate it when people think they're being funny, and I say, oh, so last week I watched this TV show.
Hmm.
Recently I watched Two Broke Girls. Oh, don't you mean you listened to it? And it's like, no, I watched it. That's the vocabulary that I've used throughout my entire life. I'm not going to change and say I listened to it just because I didn't physically watch it with my eyes. And I feel like
Right.
it's the same way with audiobooks. What, just because I can't see, you expect me to change my vocabulary and say that I'd listened to this or I consumed this story? It's just
Mhm.
easy shorthand to say I read it. And the reason that it frustrates me so much is that it leads to a fairly toxic mindset that's quite damaging to people who, especially that are in the disabled community, because that it creates this sort of gatekeeping atmosphere that
Mhm.
might push, a young person like me, who back then I was quite conscious of being labeled as a disabled person and trying to appear normal. And I wouldn't have gone near audiobooks because that gatekeeping attitude would have bled down to me. And I would have been like, oh, well, people don't even think that audiobooks are reading. So I'm not going to do that because that won't count. Whereas
Right.
for years, Chaz, I struggled trying to physically read books, and I had to hold them within an inch of my face, basically at the end of my nose. And I had to get into so many uncomfortable positions to make sure that my head didn't overshadow the page. And I used to strain my eyes because the print was too small. And
Mhm.
if I'd have just been willing to listen to audiobooks a little bit earlier on, I'd be so much more well read than I am now. I might have started writing earlier. And I'm happy with how things worked out. But that doesn't mean that it couldn't have been better if it was some other way. And I feel sorry
Yeah.
for all the young people out there that are in the disabled community, even if it's just something as simple as dyslexia, where this attitude that people are putting forward is damaging and potentially stopping people from getting involved in our community. And to me, that's completely antithetical to what the reading community is supposed to be.
Right. I agree. I agree. And yeah, and the majority of people I think do count audiobooks as reading, but it's just unfortunate that a lot of people don't. Lady Jane Books definitely thinks so. She says audiobooks count, and uh, Jenny Parks makes a good point. The only books I don't count are abridged versions. Give me the whole story.
Oh well, yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll concede you on that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
not going to say I read the book if I just read the Wikipedia article.
yeah. Yeah, I remember when my kids were younger, somebody gave us a copy of the Time Machine by H.G. Wells, but it was the abridged version, and I'm like, no, I'd like my kids to read the full version, and
Oh yeah, I can't imagine trying to share a story with your kids that you love and having it be like an abridged version. I just couldn't stomach that with like the Lord of the Rings. Oh, I'm going to give you an abridged version of this tale. Like, no, you will listen to the whole thing because it's a beautiful story, child.
right. I love that.
Yeah, that's why I'm not a dad, Chaz, because that's how I'd be. You will read Lord of the Rings, you maggot. What do you mean you don't like books? Get back in that house and read. I'll be like Matilda's parents, but in reverse.
Oh, that's awesome. Excuse me.
I
Yeah.
really can't wait to see Matilda the musical, by the way, the Tim Minchin version.
Oh, I didn't hear that was happening.
Apparently, I think it's coming out like soon, or is out, or basically I've heard about it. I think the soundtrack is already up on Spotify. But yeah, Tim
Oh,
Minchin has written a Matilda the musical that I think was on Broadway and has now been adapted to film. And I love Tim Minchin, so
oh, I love Tim Minchin. Yeah, he's awesome. Yeah. Well, that's cool. I'll have to go and look that up. Well, we've gone a little over 2 hours, so I think this is probably a good spot to stop if you're okay with that. I know it's what about 10 p.m. Your a little after 10 p.m. your time.
yeah, just a few minutes past 10. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll go ahead and call it here. But I am just absolutely thrilled to have had you on, Mason. I'm so glad we could work it out. And for anybody who's watching this stream now or on the replay, if you have not subscribed to Mason, you really need to check him out. And he's got a lot of great content, and I hope you'll join his team.
Thanks ever so much for having me on here, and thanks ever so much to everyone else for spending time with us tonight.
Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, Jenny says she's got to get ready for the gym now. Well, have fun at the gym.
Go pump some iron, Jenny.
And Lady Jane says it was an awesome discussion. I always enjoy these interviews, Chaz. Great job, Mason. Thanks, Lady Jane. Appreciate
Hope you
you.
have a lovely night, Jane. Thanks ever so much for popping in.
Well, you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining Mason and I, and make sure you read more books. I'll talk to you soon.